So, welcome everybody to Ask a Pastor. This has been long anticipated. We've all been excited for this and ready to hear what Steve has got to say. You all know Steve. Steve Riley is our senior pastor, our one and only, very own mastermind behind all the scenes.
No.
Yeah, yeah. So, we'll dive straight in with our first question, which is regarding the 1,000 years. So, I'll read the question out. Recently, someone mentioned Bethel's beliefs, which I then looked up. I understand to mean the overcoming of the world by the church. Yet Jesus said that he wonders if he will find faith when he comes again. Please, can you explain using scripture?
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. This is a cosy setup we've got here in the auditorium.
Yeah.
And I hope it works for people. And I think to say at the outset is some of the stuff we're going to be talking about, what we might call secondary doctrine, which doesn't mean they're unimportant.
Yeah.
It just means there are doctrines that Bible-believing Christians can have different views on. And I'll share some views, and you may not agree, and that's entirely fine. And I could be wrong on my view as well. So I will do the best I can.
Yeah,
to answer some of these questions. And I think there is a bit of Bethel bashing going on throughout the internet.
It does happen, yeah.
And that is sad and unfortunate. While there are things Bethel teach that I would not agree with, I am sure there are things we teach that they would not agree with.
Yeah, of course.
And so we live with that tension and that difference. And there's loads of denominations. That's why we have denominations on the whole, because they've got an emphasis that we don't have, etc. But these things are not enough to divide us. And on the whole, I think Bethel's heart is good. So I think the answer is really about your view of when the millennium happens. I think it really is all about the millennium. Now, I know that's not in the question, but I think that's what the answer is about, this 1,000-year reign. So I'm going to read from Revelation 20, which is where we get this millennium idea. And it says there, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the pit, and locked and sealed it over him, so that he would not deceive the nations any more until the 1,000 years were ended." So here we have this picture of Satan in a pit for 1,000 years. The nations are still around because the text says that he's not able to deceive them anymore. And this is a picture of a season perhaps on earth without the influence of the evil one.
Yeah.
And so this 1,000-year reign, you either believe that Jesus comes before it or he comes after it.
Yeah.
And those two views of the millennium, and there are many more views, are called post-millennial and pre-millennial. So the post-millennialists, which is where Bethel would be, but it's not only a Bethel thing, loads of other churches would be in the same place. So it's not just a Bethel issue.
Yeah.
Post-millennialism says the church is going to conquer here on earth. The church is going to be so successful with the gospel. The church is going to see the kingdom come in such increased measure that it will effectively Christianize the world. And post-millennialism basically sees the church rolling out the red carpet for Jesus to come back. And so the post-millennialists really do see the church in the ascendancy and actually sorting the world out. And that 1,000-year reign is brought in by the church, after which Jesus returns. And they would talk about, I think it's Mark 3:24, which talks about binding the strong man.
Okay.
And once you bound the strong man, you can rob his house.
Yeah.
And so the language is, the church will bind the strong man and will increasingly bind the strong man until he's effectively in the pit, which is that analogy there in Romans 20, and he's in that pit for 1,000 years. And while that happens, the earth will just go from strength to strength, and then Jesus will come back. It's a very, very positive, very optimistic view of the future. Premillennialists are really at the other end of the scale.
Okay.
They seem to be a bit pessimistic, which is a bit unfair of them, I think. But they believe that the earth is going to get worse and worse. A very well-known preacher, I just saw a title of one of his talks on YouTube recently. "It's going to get worse" was the title of his talk, and it's coming from the pre-millennial point of view. The darkness will grow, it'll get tougher, it'll get stronger, persecution will be horrendous, and Jesus will come back and rescue the church, and then he will inaugurate the 1,000-year reign. So it really depends which of those two you fall on.
Okay.
Now, as for scriptures, you are going to have to search really, really hard, because it's not obvious.
No.
There's no obvious passage where you say, there it is, post-millennialism. I can basically recommend a couple of books. In fact, I've got one here on my Kindle, which I will just have a look at right now. Yeah, I've read this one. It's called 4 Views of the End Times. Let me just jump to the cover. It's great doing this live, isn't it?
Yeah. Mate, I can get it on screen.
So,
I'll get it on screen.
4 Views of the End Times, and it basically goes through each one of them, and it gives you the scriptures for each and every one of them. So if you're really, really interested and you really want to research that, I would just suggest you get that book. It wasn't very expensive, and you can download it on your Kindle. But that, I think, answers the question. And we have to be really careful with our use of the internet, because it saddens me to see so many Christian churches having a go at another Christian church. I think it's really gone too far and got really out of hand. And when you are listening to a theologian or a minister of another denomination really, really have a go at Bethel, just be careful, because a lot of them are coming from a cessationist point of view, where they don't believe miracles are for today. They don't believe all the gifts of the Spirit are for today. So they might well not just criticise Bethel, they might criticise us as well. So we just have to be really, really careful when we're with the internet. I note as well, before we move on, the question is in the context of Luke 18, where Jesus says, will he find faith when he comes? And that is in the context, if you look at it, of prayer and persistence and faithfulness in prayer. It might be, some commentators suggest, Jesus is saying, will he find faithfulness in prayer? Will he find a faithful people praying and believing and interceding when he comes back to the earth? And the point is, Jesus leaves it as an open question. He doesn't answer it. So kind of we're filling in the blanks. And I think you've got to believe he will find believers when he comes back, or else there's no point of a rapture, and we're all in a bad way if there's no believers when Jesus comes back. So I hope that is helpful to whoever asked the question.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely helpful to me, because obviously we know the point of these things is you ask more and more questions from these points. But I think that if you were to, because there's all these things in the gospel that are sometimes introspective questions that Jesus asked that are designed for, and not designed, but that are aimed at the reader almost to think about. So will he find faith? That's an open question for us, I think, when we read it. Are we being diligent in our own spiritual lives? Are we doing all this kind of stuff? I think that's really important to keep in mind. And again, exactly what you've said, there's no need for separation on these issues. Ultimately, I think that, the ultimate truth is that we're all in the same family,
That's right.
And I think that's really good. Very, very helpful. And there you have it. There's the answer to that question today. Thanks, Steve, for the very in-depth answer.
It's a pleasure.
It's been great to pick your brains, and I'm sure we're going to do it a little bit more later on. But we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.